Hello there. I just wanted to give everyone a heads up. We are going to be talking about Kenobi on Disney Plus. So this whole episode is going to be filled with spoilers. So just a fair warning: if you have not watched it, please watch it first, then come back and join us.
Hello there. You are now entering Nick and Mello's hyperspace.
And I'm Nick, and I think my favorite part of the Kenobi series was actually Little Leia. I think she was wonderful.
And I'm Carmelo, and I agree with Nick. Leia was tremendous fun, but I really enjoyed as well the whole sort of mourning of Kenobi, of post Order 66 and losing Anakin and all of that stuff. I thought that was really well done, and it was just very exciting to watch. Very exciting to watch.
In our journeys through hyperspace, we examine everything and anything Star Wars from the point of view of two lifelong fans, one young, one old, who came together through the will of the Force.
In this episode, as we said with the spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about the latest show, Kenobi, that was on Disney Plus. And we're going to be talking about characters, story, all sorts of things. And we wanted to start with sort of general comments, sort of our general thoughts and opinions about the show, and then we'll do a little bit of character study and talk about maybe some of the new characters that we really enjoyed in this show. So, Nick, do you want to start with sort of general thoughts?
Yeah. So when the show was first announced, and I was one of the few maybe that was hesitant because I was unsure about what the story would be, what it was going to be about.
I actually remember you reacting that way.
And, I part of me was excited because we get to see Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen come back. So that's fun. And we get to explore a part of Kenobi's life that we don't really know much about. So that was cool. But, just part of me was always hesitant. What was the reason for him leaving Tatooine or in a conflict with Vader again? And to me, I thought they came up with the perfect reason, and that's Leia. Leia being in danger to me is incredible. It's something I didn't even consider. I don't know why. It just never crossed my mind.
Yeah, me too.
And when the first episode premiered and Leia gets captured, and he gets that kind of call to action from Bail, and he says the line that she's just important as Luke, and that really just hit me. And I thought, wow, yeah, that makes absolute perfect sense. And the journey they go on is just incredible, and it was much better than I anticipated. It hit a lot of marks for me that I really enjoyed.
I also was not expecting Leia to show up in this at all. And I am very pleased she did, because it was a really nice element, and it sort of brought elements of Kenobi that we didn't know. And so that was really fun. Unlike you, I was very excited when they announced that they were going to do a limited series Kenobi show. There is a wonderful series of junior novels written by Jude Watson called The Last of the Jedi, which are a series of, I think, 10 novels. I think it's 10 novels set exactly where this show is, sort of post Order 66. Kenobi is hiding in Tatooine, and something very different happens that he has to leave Tatooine, and then there are all of these wonderful adventures. And so it was really fun that I had this sort of story in my head about sort of what Jude Watson did to the story. And so I was curious to see what this sort of new incarnation of the story was going to do. And they're actually very different. I enjoyed them both very, very much, but it was fun. It was fun sort of having that story in the back of my mind, and then seeing what the show was doing. I was afraid, and pleasantly surprised. I was afraid that the show was going to be episodic, that there was going to be like this adventure here, this adventure there, that adventure here. And I really enjoyed that it was an arc. And that there was character development, and that there was sort of this sort of evolution of Kenobi from the person who he is at the very beginning of the show and the person that he becomes at the end of the show. And I really appreciated that. I thought it was really well done, and I really I was happy that it was not sort of like just little adventures. Like sometimes
Right.
When even in the
Mandalorian.
Mandalorian
Yeah,
or
it
in
is.
Boba Fett, sort of like there's just one episode.
They go to some random planet.
Let's
do
go,
something.
Liz.
Yeah.
And so it was. I actually liked very much that was not what was happening here, especially when it is a limited series and you only have. I already forgot 6 episodes, 7 episodes, 6 episodes.
Yeah.
Order 66. Of course, it has to be 6 episodes. Trying to think. There's something that you mentioned. And I forgot because I'm an old man. If I remember, I will. I will.
No.
I will tell
You're not
you.
old. You're not old. You're just experienced. That's all.
Let's talk about Leia. Let's talk about Leia.
Yeah, let's talk about Leia. Like we've mentioned before, we've enjoyed her a lot, and there was rumors that she might appear in the show, but I didn't know she was going to be like.
Oh, really? Oh, I had not heard.
I'd seen them. I didn't know how true they were, because they're rumors. But I didn't expect her to be like the second main character of the show.
Right.
And
me neither.
That was pleasant. And you and I talked previously about doing a whole episode dedicated to Leia, like a character study, and we ended up holding off on it. And I'm kind of glad we did, because I think this series, it informed Obi-Wan and developed his character. It also kind of planted seeds for who Leia's going to become and the life she's going to live. And that's something I didn't expect. And I was pleasantly surprised. And I think I've grown to appreciate Leia even more than I did before.
I still would like to do that episode, and it would be really awesome adding little Leia into it, because I thought it was really interesting. I particularly enjoyed. There's this one moment where they need to change clothes, and Kenobi buying her some clothing in a night market, and she sees these gloves, and Kenobi at first is sort of like, no, we're not getting the gloves, and she's putting them on, and it's like, and add the gloves, and I like, it's hilarious.
It is funny.
She does it really, really well, but it was a princess moment. It was a moment of privilege. It's a moment of, I am Princess Leia, I can get away with anything. And for a 10-year-old, that was so appropriate. That kind of sort of unconscious notion of privilege doesn't really show up in the adult Leia because she's grown. But it was really fun seeing sort of the consequences of being royalty. And she's not a spoiled brat, but she sort of knows that, no, I want these gloves. I'm going to get these gloves. And I really enjoyed that moment, because it sort of gave me a little window into that sort of social position of Leia that she had as a little girl, even though she was adopted, even though her cousin is sort of
rude,
dismissing her. But it's really interesting to see that. I love that glove scene. I thought it was a very revealing scene. I'm
glad you said that. I had seen people joke about that scene. I didn't ever picture it that way or consider that, but I'm glad you consider that. I saw people joking on Twitter. Funnily enough, it was they were saying that in the first episode he was trying to give Luke the Skyhopper little machine that he plays with, and of course he didn't give it to him at that point, and people were saying, well, he couldn't spoil Luke, so he's going to spoil Leia. So he's going to spoil one of the twins. He chose Leia because she was willing to. But no, I found it a really hilarious moment. It is a good point,
but a really interesting moment.
And even later on, when we see her, like, she's captured by the third sister, she even says, "You can't do this to me. Do you know who I am? Do you know where I come from?
You know who I am? Yeah, my father's going to bring an army."
Right, and he only brings Obi-Wan, but
where's the army?
But yeah, that actually makes a lot more sense now that you said that, because I made that connection with the gloves. We get to see that a little bit, even though I think she at this point is kind of unaware of what the Empire is doing and what the evil they're doing,
of course,
and what who Rev is or who Vader is, any of that. But it's kind of a wake-up call for her that this galaxy is not, it's a lot of people suffer that I didn't realize.
And that's a really interesting point, Nick, because it was fun seeing Leia realizing the world outside, the world of the Empire, there's a moment where she sort of says, well, isn't the Empire supposed to be doing something about this?
Mm-hmm.
There's this like very brief conversation with Kenobi about it. And so it was really interesting to see that. It was really interesting to have this show as the moment when Leia is sort of discovering the world outside.
Right.
That she's been in this sort of shelter world of the palace, and now she gets to see what's actually going on out there. And so this is the beginning. This is the beginning of the rebel, when she starts sort of realizing that there are haves and have-nots, that there are inequities, that there is oppression, that there is brutality, that there's all of these things that that she was not experiencing when she was living in Alderaan.
Right.
So that was fun too. I really, as a narrative structure, I enjoyed that as well.
And I think there's now that you're saying that, I remember reading Princess Leia of Alderaan by Claudia Gray, and canonically, I think she's about 14 or 15 at that point. So
yeah,
a few years after this, and she doesn't know her parents are like working with the rebellion, and at that point, she knows they do like humanitarian efforts and things, but she didn't realize how deep they were into it. And this is kind of a nice connection where she doesn't realize there's the rebellion going on, but she knows her parents this is kind of her first realization that her parents are more than just senators like the rest of the people we saw at the dinner party. And it's cool to see that, and kind of, I love how they keep it close to the vest and make it work. It's cool.
Yeah, it was fun. And it was so much fun seeing the parents, because we see them very briefly at the end of Revenge of the Sith, sort of holding the baby, and that's it. Right. And so it was fun. It was fun seeing a lot more interaction between Leia and her parents. That was really fun.
And we get to see Alderaan, which, in A New Hope we don't. We don't see it except for when it's destroyed. So we get to see what it's like out there and what the people are like that live on that planet. So that's
it looked familiar. Do we see it anywhere else? Or
we see it briefly at the end of Revenge of the Sith when he's dropping off Leia. That's the only time we ever see it.
Okay.
But it's cool to see the other people that live there, what it's like, their culture. So it's cool.
Yeah.
Has a little weight.
No, I enjoyed that very much. Shall we talk about Kenobi versus Vader?
Yeah, the rematch of the century.
Well, I don't know about that, but
that's what it was marketed as. So.
Certainly, but I, as we have talked offline about this, I enjoyed having Vader in the show. I thought that was really interesting. I understand why he was there. Was it the favorite part of the show? Not really. But I sort of understand why he was there. I actually appreciated having the sort of arc of Kenobi getting over the mourning of Anakin. And sort of narratively that was interesting, and that was fun. I think I just wanted to know about Kenobi.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I enjoyed it. But it certainly was not my favorite part of the show.
I liked him in the show. It's not my favorite thing that he's ever been in, obviously, but the way they used him sparingly to me was great. And I've always, like we talked about, the fewer things Vader says, the better he is. I don't need him to give a long sequelically about what his plans are, or why he is the way he is. I think they subtly just drop that with his actions and his reactions to things.
Yes. I really liked how brutal he is.
Yes.
And he was scary. He's supposed to be scary.
Yeah.
But he was really scary. And so I appreciated that. It sort of had the feel of the end of Rogue One.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only 10 years after he turns into Vader. Right. So this is a very angry Anakin.
Right.
And a very vindictive Anakin. And so it sort of makes sense that's there.
I like how you mentioned earlier he has an arc, and it's more subtle than it is, say, for Kenobi or even Leia. But the composer of this series, Natalie Holt, I think is her name, and she did a lot of the music. And there was an interview, I think, after the last episode came out, and she talked about why they saved the Imperial March until the last episode because he has that conversation with Palpatine, and he commits to Palpatine, and because he questions, I think you're dwelling on Kenobi too much. And I think that's important as we get to see that transition. Is obviously throughout the whole show he's obsessed with getting to Kenobi, and then I think at the end he realizes, I'm moving on, just like Kenobi has to move on. They both kind of go their separate ways. I think it was beautifully done because I didn't really expect that out of Kenobi the whole time. I thought we would just see a monster, not really get any kind of arc, just kind of a slasher villain in a way.
You're talking about Anakin Vader, not Kenobi.
Yeah, Anakin Vader. Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
I thought he would get more of a slasher villain, no really any emotional depth, and they did really good. I thought it was intense. The last fight.
I'm terrible at speculating, but I had assumed that we were going to only see him in flashbacks. I didn't know that we were going to have Vader until I saw the trailer, and Vader actually shows up. I just assumed that he was in the show because we were going to go back to Anakin being a Padawan. But not what they did, because I don't work for Disney. I don't make decisions. But it was. I enjoyed how mean he was. And I enjoyed the sort of anger of Vader, because it's really interesting when we see him in the original trilogy. He's certainly brutal, but there's a mastery. In Empire Strikes Back, Vader is in control, and so it's interesting to see a younger Vader,
right,
rather than the older Vader that we get in the original trilogy. And so that was an interesting link between what we saw in the original trilogy and what we get to see in the show. That's true. That I actually appreciated very much.
That's very true. Much. We don't really see a lot of that in the, like you said, in the original trilogy. He's been doing this for a long time. And I think, and this is just me, maybe my headcanon, but I think by the Empire Strikes Back, like you mentioned, he knows Luke is his son, and maybe that's why we see him not as brutal. Maybe there's a change in his heart and his mind that slowly is happening. That's just me. But
he's very secure of himself. I mean, that duel with Luke in Empire Strikes Back is sort of. He reminds me of Count Dooku in the prequel, where he is barely dueling with anybody because Dooku knows it's shit.
Yeah.
And Vader has that feel in the original trilogy, and he doesn't have that feel here.
Right.
And I really appreciated that subtle detail about where we are in the story of Vader. And Anakin, he might be dead, but the anger of Anakin is still very much there.
Right.
Very much there. And so that was fun.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about the fight in particular, the last fight between Vader and Anakin.
In the last episode.
In the last episode, yes.
Okay. I started enjoying it when they started throwing rocks at each other.
Really? Okay, so that's where I differ. I didn't enjoy that as much.
Oh, the other stuff is sort of like, okay, they're dueling.
Yeah.
When they started throwing rocks at each other, I'm like, okay, this is awesome.
I think
so. For you, it was the opposite.
Yeah, I think it. I don't know. It just feels very over the top to me. I know we haven't really seen that in Star Wars, and we see it more in the animated stuff.
Right.
We haven't really seen that in any of the movies or the live action series, but I don't know. It just felt very over the top to me. I didn't hate it. It just was. I don't know. It just seems a little out of place to me for live action.
Interesting.
To me, the best part of the fight was not even actually them fighting, was when his mask is cut and you hear the wheezing and they have the conversation.
Oh yeah, that's pretty awesome.
I love those emotional, impactful moments. Those are great. But the fight itself, I wasn't really there for that. We knew both characters are going to live.
Right.
So the tension's a little cut for me there. But I still enjoyed those moments of them having a conversation. I thought that was cool.
I guess I didn't come to this show to see Vader and Obi-Wan fighting again. And I knew it was going to happen, but that's not why I was watching the show.
Right.
And so when it got over the top, I sort of enjoyed it because I was not expecting it.
I can understand that.
And you're right. I mean, it's very typical. This whole rock thing and throwing stuff like that. That's very prequel Clone Wars kind of thing.
Right.
It's certainly it's not the duel that happens in A New Hope, but I enjoyed sort of transferring that kind of over the topness of animation into live action. I thought that was fun.
It was fun. It was.
All right. Shall we
talk about some of these,
about all those other amazing characters?
Some of the supporting characters
that we had.
Yeah.
I love Haja.
Haja's cool.
He was just the idea of having somebody impersonating a Jedi.
It's funny.
Was both hilarious and fascinating.
I liked him at first. I thought he was going to be strictly comedic relief, but he grew on me a lot.
Yeah.
I think he really, because obviously he's a con man, and
right
at first you think he's just a con man. You don't think there's anything there, but then Obi-Wan kind of has to trust him because he's left with no choice but to trust him. And I think it's cool how Obi-Wan takes the chance and it works out for him.
Yep.
It doesn't always happen like that in Star Wars, but
no, that's true. And I actually I don't know if you felt the same way as I did, but I actually loved that I never knew when I could actually trust him.
That's exactly how I felt. Yeah, I didn't know.
Like I love that it was not one of these sort of like, oh, we can trust him now. I was always sort of like,
can we though?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. And so it took a while for the story to reveal that, and I enjoyed that I was never sure.
Right.
I was never sure.
And, Obi-Wan was kind of in the same position we are. He didn't know how far he could go to trust this guy, or
I
don't know if I sent you this picture. I saw it on Twitter. There's another connection to A New Hope that I really like. It's about when he meets Han at the cantina, and he says that based off his experience with meeting Haja, I think he kind of developed that sense of he's a con man, but he has a good heart, kind of like Haja. And I think they said, and the person that made the thread, he said, that's why he goes to Han. He knows that, he's lying. He may be full of it, but there's a heart. There's something there where he's going to help at the end of the day.
Oh, that's lovely.
I think that encounter and that working with Haja, I think that's kind of what opened his eyes to that. And
got it.
I don't know if that's what they intended, but that's what I really enjoy about that. I thought that was
that's
cool.
Fun. I had not thought about it. I had not made the connection between his experience with Haja and then later his experience with Han, but it makes sense.
It does, and it
certainly makes sense.
It's cool.
Yeah.
He's funny. He lives, so I don't know if we'll ever see him again, but I would love to see him again. He's hilarious.
Oh, he's awesome.
He's great.
Yeah, and he's a great actor, and he was so fun. It was so fun having a fake Jedi. That was just.
I love the magnets.
It's just wonderful.
The magnets are the funny. Yes. It's so funny. I never thought of that before. Make a quick connection. There's I don't know how far you are, Dr. Aphra, the comic right now.
I haven't started it yet.
Okay, well, the newest
I'm a bad fan. Sorry.
With Alyssa Wong, she encounters some kind of a cult style group that worship the dark side, and they do the same thing. They use magnets to supplement for the Force, and of course, it ends up being a con. They find out, but it's pretty interesting. I was like, oh, that's neat. So it's not the first time we've seen that, but I think they did it better in the show, so it's pretty cool.
No, I have a job. I'm so far behind reading comics.
I'm with you.
It's just tough. When you're 18 or when you're 15, like
all the time in the world.
You have all the time in the world.
Right.
When you're 56 and you got to correct papers and you have meetings, it's book review deadlines. You gotta do the shit too.
Time is very sensitive.
Yeah. I know. You had mentioned Tala.
Oh yes. I like her.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
She might be one of my favorite standout character, a new character.
Interesting.
She was great. I enjoyed her story. And kind of like Haja, he had to kind of go off Haja's intel. And, we see when they get to that, I can forget the name of the planet where they get on the back of the truck with Freck. I love him. Yeah. He's hilarious.
Yeah.
But he's unsure. He's like, nobody's here. Obviously I got played, I got conned. And then later she shows up and helps him out. And he's kind of having to do the same thing again, trust somebody
Right.
he's unsure about. She
Right.
obviously, she works for the Empire, so can I really trust her? But it is cool. I liked her interaction with Leia a lot when they go to the path. And another great connection that I see, little Leia is talking to her, and obviously Leia knows at this point she works for the Empire, and she's kind of heard her story. And Leia says something like, "Is it hard to always have to lie?"
Yeah.
And then somebody on Twitter also pointed out the scene in A New Hope. I love this show so much for this. But when they first board the Tantive 4 and Vader says, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan." And it's just like, dang, Tala, I think, informs Leia's character a lot too. It's awesome. It's so great.
No, she was very good. It's really interesting while I'm listening to you, how the show is constantly finding moments where Kenobi needs to decide if this person is to be trusted or not.
Right.
And so he's sort of living, because he's in a hideout. He's a recluse now for 10 years. And now he has to live with the world, has to deal with the world. And so it's really fun how the show is sort of, in the same way that Leia has left Alderaan and has to see the world for what it is, Kenobi is leaving his hideout and having to deal with all of the complexity of the world itself. It's really fun that those two things are happening at the same time, that they're both, in a way, Leia is discovering the world and Kenobi is having to deal with the world again. Very briefly, it was really fun having the Latino parents of Leia, having Brea and Bale, and the mom. The mom was awesome.
She was funny.
she was really, really fun. It was just so fun seeing sort of the interactions of the parents, and Leia. That was really, really fun. Go ahead.
I was going to say, now that you mentioned the Organas, I really enjoyed the goodbye Kenobi says to Leia, and he's telling her, you're passionate, you get all these qualities from your parents. That was not only a tear-jerking moment, but
that was beautiful. That was just beautiful.
He tells her, I can't tell you everything. And then she kind of looks over and says, "You don't have to. I have a family." Or she doesn't say that, but she looks at the Organas and it's like, it's okay. I know who my parents are.
Right.
And it was just very touching. And like we've talked about many times on our podcast, that the idea of found family and that you don't have to be blood to be family still hits hard. And it's so cool. So cool to see that.
No, that was beautiful. That whole moment was just beautiful.
Yeah. Because, and
sort of recognizing, he just fought Vader.
Right.
But recognizing the positive traits of Anakin and seeing those positive traits in Leia was a really good way of sort of wrapping up the conflict that Kenobi had with Anakin turning into Vader, and sort of remembering the good things of who that person was, and now we have it in the next generation, and we have it in Leia. So
it kind of closes out Obi-Wan and Anakin's arc that way when he describes her with Anakin's positive traits, because Vader says, "I killed Anakin, don't take this blame." And that's kind of Obi-Wan saying, my friend is dead. This is what he left with you. And his memory is going to live through you, even if he's not who he used to be. It's beautiful, really. Showed us such a great job at that.
And let's not, last but not least, let's talk about the third sister.
Yes. Who was incredible. I was unsure about her at first, but she grew on me a lot. I think I really appreciate her arc at the end of she spent her whole adult life basically after Order 66 trying to get revenge on Anakin and Vader, and her coming to the realization at the end that I'm becoming the exact person I've hated my whole life.
Yeah.
And his life is miserable, and my life has been miserable. It's not getting me anywhere. And I enjoyed that she lived, because a lot of times in Star Wars, we get a redemption arc and the person dies immediately. So I kind of enjoyed that. I don't know if we'll ever see her again. I'm sure we will. I don't know if in what form. It might be a movie, might be a TV
comic
series, might be a novel, who knows? But I just enjoyed that. In the future, we might get to see what happens with her, because that was such a powerful arc.
I don't know if you I don't know if you remember, halfway through the show, I remember sending you a hot take on a text, sort of like, I think she's actually good. I don't know if she's
You did say that.
really
I remember.
mean. I kept wondering about her.
Yeah.
And when we get the story of what she's actually doing, it was sort of like, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I remember that.
A lot of sense.
And I think at the time I was unsure. I was like, I don't know if they're going to go.
Well, I wasn't sure either,
Well,
because
neither of us.
she was so angry.
And
We
manipulative.
just didn't know what the anger anger was directed at.
Yeah.
And so that was really, really fun. Talking about that, I love that the entire show starts with Order 66 and little Reva escaping the clones in the Jedi Temple. I was not expecting that. I was not expecting that. When my husband was watching the first episode, he said, "Oh, the Jedi are doing Tai Chi."
Pretty much, yes.
They're all like moving.
It made me think of waterbending in Avatar.
Yes,
the moves they were doing.
God, yes,
that's what it made me think of. Obviously, not the same thing, but it kind of reminded me of that. It was cool.
Oh God, we need to do a podcast about Avatar.
Star Wars is enough. No,
we could do a little spin-off, like a limited series.
There you go. I like her a lot. Like I said, she grew on me.
I really liked her, and I loved that we didn't know her motives for the first part of the show.
Right.
And so that was really fun, because, for people that have read the comics, but people that have seen Rebels, we don't have Inquisitors with a double motive. They are pure evil, and they have a project, and this is what they do. So it was fun having an Inquisitor that was more complex than that.
Right.
Because our expectation is that these are the baddies, period, end of story. And we get a more interesting story with Reva. And I thought that was really quite fun.
We get another theme that always is important to Star Wars is redemption, and that no matter what you do, you can always make the right decision at any time. And I think a lot of people were complaining about, I don't believe her redemption arc. It's very, she did a lot of terrible things and yada, yada, yada. And she did, but so did Vader. He came back.
Right.
So did Kylo Ren. He came back.
Right.
So, I'm very, very happy with that. And her realization, I don't know if you interpreted it this way, but when Luke is unconscious and she's walking towards him, she flashes back to seeing herself there and seeing him, and the parallels of, I'm doing exactly what Vader did. I'm not any better. This is not going to solve anything.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and I didn't know how to interpret it. A lot of people had said, she knows that that's Anakin's son, and she's seeing the good that was in Anakin, and that's why I didn't take it that way. I just took it as she's seeing an innocent kid, and she was an innocent kid.
That's the way I read it. I don't think
she knew.
She's aware.
I don't think she knows
who Luke and Leia are.
No, I think she just
knows. She knows that Kenobi
watched over this kid. I'm sure had a connection to the kid, and she wanted to get revenge on him.
That's exactly.
That's how I took it. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's how I interpreted it.
That's the way I felt it. I don't. I mean, I've only seen the show once.
Same.
Well, actually, I've seen most episodes twice. I haven't seen the last episode more than once.
Same here.
But I never had the feeling that she was actually aware of who the kids
who he
were.
was. Yeah.
She knew they were important. She is force sensitive, so she might have sensed something.
Right.
But I don't think that she knew. I don't think she got it. I don't think she understood.
I took it as in that moment she's physically in pain, and then she's emotionally in pain, and she's just looking for an easy target to cause more pain to help her release her tension.
Yep.
And obviously it doesn't work, but that's kind of how I read it. I didn't see it as, I'm going to get back at Vader by killing his son, or Obi-Wan for killing his best friend's
Indeed.
son.
Indeed.
I didn't take it that way. Some people did. They said that Luke and Anakin, she saw the connection, and there was goodness in Anakin and who he used to be. But I never took it that way. I didn't. That was till after somebody pointed that out to me that I realized that.
And you had a final rant for today about people making assumptions. So if we had like special effects technology, there would be a red letters saying rant.
It's not bad.
So Nick.
I'm not attacking actors or filmmakers.
Oh God, no.
I am attacking the audience a little bit. A little bit. Not everyone, but
I'm gonna burn down your house.
And I'm guilty of doing this in myself in the past. So, like I've mentioned throughout the episode, I've loved all the connections to A New Hope and how they've kind of, I think perfectly, they've tied it all together and made it such a better viewing experience, making New Hope more impactful, especially with Kenobi and Leia's relationship and, the things with Vader. And I just think it makes it so much better. Just like Rogue One did for me to A New Hope. I think it improves the movie, which is, I think that's what you want from a prequel or a, anthology series. But my biggest rant was, and like I said, I'm guilty of this, so I'm probably going to sound hypocritical, but there's so many times after an episode, each week I would see on Twitter or Facebook that people would say, that breaks canon. That doesn't make sense. And we're on episode 3 out of 6. And I think
we got away.
The binging culture, Netflix will release a whole season of something and people just watch it in one sitting, and it just kind of ruins things that, you have to wait for a story to play out. We don't know where this is going. So it's kind of hard to say this breaks canon or, like the main one was when Vader says, when I left you, I was the learner, but now I'm the master. And after they're done 3, obviously you could tell who the master was.
Right.
And, we still had 3 episodes to go. So you can't say that it was breaking canon or making A New Hope worse. You don't know how the story's going to end. You got to be patient a little bit. Just give it time. And I think, like I said,
fans are never patient.
No, and I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
Oh, it's not just you.
Obnoxious. It was obnoxious having to say to people, "Hey, let the show."
I guess
finish.
Because I am old and have gray hairs, I see those things online, and I'm like, "Oh my, these people are never." I just move. I continue scrolling.
Maybe I engage too much, but I'll learn that as I get wiser. I don't know. It's just funny how this.
How children leave the worst behavior for the parents.
Yes.
Well, people leave their worst behavior for online interaction.
That makes sense.
And so I just assume the worst.
Right.
And so if I get something better than that, it's sort of like, yay, happy day.
Oh.
Life is too short. Life is too short.
That is fair.
But it's been I have loved the show. It was just really, really fun. I'm really interested in watching it like all the way through. My husband and I we watched the first episode together a couple of days ago. We'll see how long he lasts. We can't do violence, so we're screwed. It's Star Wars.
It gets pretty rough.
But I really wanted him to meet Leia.
She's
because I was sort of like, Joseph, even if we just watch the first 2 episodes, let's just watch the first 2 episodes. And so I'm glad that he liked Leia. So I'm happy. Even if we stop now, he's met Leia. I want him to see the glove scene. Because I want to know how he reacts.
I'm going to watch that with a different set of eyes next time I see it. Because that's cool.
Fun.
Do you, I want to wrap up with asking you, and I think we probably have the same, we haven't talked about it, but I think we have the same opinion. But
okay.
How do you think this is it? Do you think there needs to be a season 2, or do you think there needs to?
No.
Okay. I thought so. I've seen people are speculating.
Because Star Wars fans want more and more and more
and more. Exactly.
And more and more.
And I know people I work with, and
I don't think it needs it. I wouldn't mind spin-offs.
Yeah.
I would love to know what Third Sister does now. I would love to know the history of Haja. I would love to have a prequel to Tala.
Yeah.
Any of that stuff, I think that would be really, really fun.
That'd be cool.
Does the show need a second season? I don't think so.
I don't think I need to see any more from Kenobi.
I read a short interview with Taika Waititi, the New Zealand director, and
Love that guy.
He was pointing out that we need, I'm sure the term existed before, but he said we need less legacy Star Wars.
Yes.
And we need more new stuff. It's one of the reasons why I love High Republic.
Yes.
Because I'm getting a whole world that is connected to the world we know, but is very different. Yes. And has a whole set of characters and a whole set of issues that were not present before. And so I don't need a season 2.
Right.
I think the show was filmed to be a limited series.
Right.
I don't think the show was created to create more seasons.
I don't think so either.
And to so me, whatever they do is if they do something, it has to be a departure of some sort.
Right. Well, and I think
we got it.
I think that, if you were to do a season 2, you can't have him meet Vader again. To me, that just undercuts what happened in the first season. You can't have Leia being in danger again, because that just makes it's like, again,
that sounds like American television from the 1980s.
You can't have Luke being in danger again. It just, I don't know. I think it's fine. I get people are excited and love the show, but some things just need to end. Everything doesn't need to be a sequel or a spinoff, which
I found it
hypocritical of us.
This is getting very long, but I just wanted to say that it was curious that in the trailer we get to see little Luke.
Yeah.
But we barely meet him as a character.
Right.
And Leia is not anywhere in the trailers.
Right.
And she's one of the main characters.
That's funny.
I found that really interesting.
That's kind of like Grogu. He was not in the first season trailer for Mandalorian at all. And then
he needed to be a surprise there.
That's true.
He needed to be a surprise there.
I'm under the impression that's kind of what they wanted to do with Leia, make her a surprise. Yeah. So
she's the next Grogu. Anyway, thank you, Nick. Thank you, audience.
This was fun.
Oh, absolutely.
That's always fun when we get together. But
it is. I love doing these shows.
I do too.
Even if 3 people watch us, it's still fun.
Well, those 3 people will enjoy this, I hope.
Absolutely right. That's the way it works. Bye, guys.
Thank you, guys.